I can tell you what Democrats are hoping for, that he makes it through the speech. There's a report today, first thing this morning from Axios, headline, Democrats pin 2024 hopes and fears on Biden's State of the Union. And they report that Democrat lawmakers are telling Axios that President Biden's State of the Union performance on Thursday is going to be pivotal for his attempts to dispel voter concerns about his age. Now, let me just pause for a moment and contemplate that it's pivotal. I don't know how many people are actually going to watch this thing. Like, how many people are actually going to be fixated on the State of the Union? There may be some viral clips that go around, especially if Joe Biden falls asleep in the middle of the speech. That'll be a big deal. That'll get all over the place. You'll probably see it on your favorite social media app, including TikTok, if it's still allowed in the United States by the end of the week. More on that coming up, too. There's a huge TikTok story developing on Capitol Hill today. But Axios reports that some Democrats are dreading a high-profile senior moment, they say, a euphemism for Biden's brain ceasing to work in the middle of the speech. Quote, "We are all nervous," said one House Democrat, citing concerns about the 81-year-old Biden's ability to speak without blowing things. Another House Democrat said, "Listen, Trump has made rhetorical slips. Biden is going to make rhetorical slips. I think the key is his energy level," said the other House Democrat. And then they go on to say that, Biden, there's a bunch of Democrats quoted here. Biden's done a great job. Biden's good. Biden's good. A longtime Democrat strategist, Doug Sosnick, told Axios, given concerns about Biden's age, his delivery will be as important as his substance. So basically, the expectations are rock bottom today. Just rock bottom today, as low as they can possibly be from Biden's own party. They think that if he can make it through the speech, speaking coherent English, that's enough. That's enough for them. And that'll be a big success, and let's just get him off stage. Now, I don't know about the timing here is amazing. I realize this is the traditional time, or at least as far as I can remember, 9 o'clock at night, a typical time to give a State of the Union address. I submit to you it's way too late, but it makes sense. 9 o'clock, candidly, it does make sense, actually, that you would give this State of the Union at 9 p.m. because you're dealing with a bunch of different time zones. That means California sees it at 6 p.m. in the evening. That's why that makes a lot more sense than, say, 5 p.m. for California. Heck, Hawaii is, 6 hours behind? So you've got another 3 hours to contemplate there. 9 o'clock, that means 3 o'clock in the afternoon Hawaii time. So, yeah, it's the best possible time you can do it to get the most possible Americans viewing it. But Biden doesn't do events at 9 o'clock. Biden doesn't do events at 9 a.m. Forget 9 p.m. The White House doesn't do that. Remember Jen Psaki kind of famously going on television after she was done being White House press secretary and saying she was stunned when they rolled Biden out for something like an 8 a.m. address in the morning. Like, he's never up at this time. He never gives speeches at this time. In fact, the only times he's available, if at all, are typically between the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. For a long time, the White House was telling the press that they were concluding all of the public events for the day at 4 p.m. That's what you call the lid in White House press speak. It was the lid every day was at 4 p.m. And then people started noticing, why are you calling a lid at 4? Everyone else, the whole Western world is still at work. And Joe Biden is done for the day? What's that about? So they would push it back to, it's 6 o'clock now. Even though there were no events added, they would just claim, well, the lid is now being called at 6. So they have a fake lid to suggest that Joe Biden is working extra hard. But unless the rumors about Joe Biden's stunt double are real, they're putting Joe Biden out tonight at 9 o'clock. And here's one of the other features that you have to wonder about. What kind of drug cocktail are they pumping into this guy to get him going at 9 o'clock? Right? What are they doing? Do they medicate him to get him to a point where he can be as coherent as possible, just get him off stage, where he can handle the steps up the dais and the ability to do this presentation this evening? I wish I could tell you that we could have trust in the White House medical office. That Dr. O'Connor over there, he's, longtime Biden family doctor. They don't present him to the press. He doesn't answer any questions. He says the physical that they just completed on Biden is perfect. He's shipshape. He's doing great, fit for service. And they have, he said that he requires no accommodations in order to be president, in order to do his job. And the rest of us are sitting there going, what? No accommodations? Well, then what do you call the note cards he uses for literally every interaction he has? Not just the public ones, but the donor interactions or the interactions he has with members of Congress behind closed doors. Why does he need note cards for all of those events? He can't remember anything off the top of his head about his own agenda, his own policies, his own priorities, his own negotiations? Kind of seems like an accommodation. Why does he take the short steps on Air Force One rather than the traditional long steps that every other president takes? What is that? What is that? If not an accommodation? Of course, it's an accommodation. So right there, you're lying to us about what's going on. And then there's the substance of the speech tonight. Now, I'm expecting darkness from the White House speechwriters this evening. I'm expecting a lot of darkness because Biden doesn't have optimism and sunshine to run on. It's not running on hope. He's not running on a positive future for the country. He's not running on any of that. He's not running on a good record. To the extent that he'll talk about one, he'll mislead the public. He'll lie. He'll say that the economy is better off now than it was 4 years ago. It's not. People are poorer. If he talks about the border at all, he's not going to bring up Laken Riley, God forbid. He's not going to bring her up. He wouldn't mention something that obviously implicates him and the blood that's on his hands as a result of destroying America's borders and releasing foreign nationals into our country, some of whom commit heinous violent crimes against American citizens. And if he discusses the border at all, it will be to blame Republicans for what's going on. In fact, he's getting encouragement to do that very thing. You have people on CNN. Here's a CNN commentator, Natasha Alford, in the last 24 hours ahead of this speech, saying it's time to blame Republicans for the border.
President Biden has to take back the narrative that he has been inactive around this issue. It is a really complex issue, and when Donald Trump says things like mass deportation, that's very clear and easy to understand. That may resonate with certain people who are afraid about what the broken immigration system represents in terms of scarcity of resources, what their opportunities will be in America.
I like how she's pretending like this is some sort of imagined threat. Oh, it's just a broken immigration. What it represents, what the symbol of a broken immigration system is. No. What are the consequences of our invasion? What are the consequences of that? Well, communities across the country are feeling that. Perhaps cable news studios are immune from that. MSNBC seems to be. They were laughing about it earlier this week when they saw that Virginians ranked it as their number one concern. But here's a CNN analyst. I presume she's supposed to be a journalist of some kind, an objective person, saying that Biden needs to transfer blame for this on Republicans.
That's a little bit different than saying, hey, I need more judges. I need more resources at the border. That's something that doesn't resonate emotionally. So he has to make it clear that he understands this is a problem. He's not sticking his head in the sand on it, and that he has solutions. But the reason those solutions haven't moved forward is because Donald Trump is encouraging people to play politics rather than do something immediately about the border.
Yeah, so there it is. That's the recommendation there. You can be certain that the White House already thought it up, or maybe they even told Natasha Alford, hey, say this on television, please, because that will be the plan tonight to the extent it's discussed at all. Corinne was on MSNBC, speaking of MSNBC, talking about what you'll hear tonight from the president. Let's go point by point here.
Look, you're going to hear the president address how our democracy is under attack.
In other words, establish a predicate for trampling the civil liberties of Americans. We should arrest them and censor them for fear that they'll undermine our democracy.
Freedoms are certainly under attack. He's going to speak to what we've been seeing across the country as it relates to women's health care and the radical, extreme bills that we're seeing.
He's gonna advocate for more baby death tonight, because when things aren't going well, human sacrifice has historically always proven to be the way out.
On abortion, on IVF, you're going to hear the president be very loud and clear about that. And we know that voting rights is an issue here that the president has spoken to, has been spoken to very clearly. He even took an executive action very early on in his administration.
Yeah, in fact, in the past week, Merrick Garland announced that they have a war against voter ID going on nationwide. Voter ID is a way, of course, to secure the vote. Nobody's vote is, quote, suppressed by it. In fact, when they established voter ID across all of the ballots in the state of Georgia, guess what happened to the black vote? Oh, it went up. It went up in Georgia. This is a hoax that the left has long perpetrated. And in fact, what Corinne is saying here is that our election system needs to be more vulnerable. More vulnerable. So, okay, so lock up Americans, censor them, sacrifice more babies, and make our election system more vulnerable. Those are the talking points for tonight.
See what we can do on the federal level to deal with, to make it easier for folks to vote. So you'll hear him certainly lean into that as well tonight. Look, it is important. It is important, we believe, that as the president, let's not forget, when he first decided to run in 2019, he talked about the soul of this nation and really fighting.
John Meacham wrote that for him.
The soul of America. That didn't end with the president being elected, obviously, in 2020. That continues. That continues. And it is important for this president to continue to talk about our freedoms and how they are under attack. They are. In extreme ways, by extreme Republicans. And so he's...
Yeah, our freedoms are under attack from the other guys, not the party that's in power that's currently trampling them like crazy. Okay, hold on. Your insights on this subject coming up as well. It is...
Hey there. So
hey, Tom.
My thought here is that they're going to pump him full of Adderall for the first 20 minutes, get all their talking points in, and then the media will only cover that. But beyond that, since you have the Attorney General coming up later, what I've proposed is the Democrats are preparing to put the abortion issue on ballots as referendums to get their side to turn out.
Right.
Why don't we have any referendums on our ballot, like, say, how about we only count U.S. citizens in the census? Because if you look up the immigration, the legal immigration that's taken place, Democrats have gained about 22 seats in the current structure based on where these folks are going. Increase their lead in the House, as well as eventually turning them into voters.
Yeah, it's a smart point. I saw Elon Musk was tweeting about this today, or Xing about it, I guess, about this very thing. And we've discussed it here a lot, which is that the census does count. They just count human bodies, and then they apportion lawmakers on the basis of those human bodies in those districts all around the country. So as a result, illegal immigrants are used for electoral strength for Democrats. It's like the craziest thing, but it keeps going. Yeah, that should be stopped. No question. I totally agree with you. In fact, Donald Trump tried to establish what the data was on that, and Democrats were able to use the court system to stop him from asking in the census about immigration status. But it's an excellent point. And one last thing on what Tom is referencing here, the use of referendums to drive turnout. It's long been a tactic of the left to do that, whether it's abortion or it's weed. Weed is typically one of the things that they use as a turnout driver for sort of, every so often voters. They're like, hey, how about this? How about we legalize weed? Maybe that'll get you to the polls and you'll vote for Biden. So, yeah, of course, Republicans should find those ballot referendums, put them on the ballot, and drive some turnout. It's a smart idea, and you can make the country better in the process. Let me go to Marty in Gainesville, line 5. Marty, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Yeah, Vince, thanks. Hey, if these reports I'm hearing are correct, I'm absolutely ecstatic if Biden is going to rant about quote-unquote corporate greed and jack up, corporate tax rates, because I think he's just going to make himself look like a complete left-wing extremist. And since he's trying to fight against what he calls MAGA extremism, I mean, this is going to be perfect. If he was smart, he'd probably try to position himself like in the center, and I'm sure he'll try to tell us that Donald Trump is going to be the next Hitler. But if he's basically going to put forth a platform that, Fidel Castro might have done, yes, I think it's only going to help.
Yeah, it's whether it's raising taxes or imposing price controls on these companies. That is the plan. But just to remind people, your expenses under Biden have gone up 18%. The same is true for American companies, American manufacturers, 18%. In other words, they haven't been stealing anything from you. You're just paying more because they're paying more. That's how it works. And Biden's looking to make your life a lot more expensive through that.
Well, I just hope people don't buy this garbage about inflation's under control, because even if it is, I mean, how's he going to get the prices back down to what they were 3 years ago?
Yeah, no, it's not going to happen. And of course, they endlessly print money, which is how inflation got out of control in the first place. Marty, thank you. Rob is calling in from Warrenton, line 2. Rob, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
Hello, calling from Blood Red, Ruby Red, Fauquier County. Calling to tell you there are actually 2 reasons why I'm not going to watch tonight. The first is I'm on cardiac medication, and I'm sure if I watch, my blood will boil.
Oh, man.
The second is if I watch, I'll undoubtedly throw one of my size 15s to my new 85-inch big screen. So
you don't want to do that. And that sounds great. 85 inches. That's a nice television.
Oh, yeah. It's good to be retired.
Yeah, it is. That sounds great. All right, Bob. Well, thank you. Yeah, smart. I think the first point is the most important. You got to keep your heart healthy. That's a really big deal. Tonight, State of the Union. The name that will not appear, at least from Biden's mouth, Laken Riley, the University of Georgia nursing student who was murdered recently, allegedly at the hands of an illegal immigrant from Venezuela, who was released by the Biden administration into the country. Now, for more on this, I want to bring in Bobby Burack, who is kind of covering the broad contours of all of this and noticing that Joe Biden has treated other deaths very differently. Bobby, from OUTKICK, good to have you with us, sir.
Vince, I appreciate it. Laken Riley is the political inverse of George Floyd. And you look at the reaction to it. Remember, in 2020, Joe Biden, Democrats, and his media allies, they saw George Floyd as a political opportunity. They used his singular death and portrayed it as a illustration of a wider issue in America, which is systemic racism in the police force, while never actually proving that his black skin color contributed to his death. But even 4 years later, we're still talking about George Floyd. Laken Riley, by contrast, is a political indictment on Joe Biden. She is the story that he wants to suppress, like he did the Hunter Biden laptop story was, because this is a young woman, 22-year-old nursing student, who died at the hands of an illegal immigrant, a thug that entered this country illegally 2 years back because of Joe Biden's open border policy, rather. So while Joe Biden wanted to tether George Floyd to his campaign in 2020 and did, Laken Riley is an avatar of the consequences of negligence at the border, and I don't believe voters are going to take that lightly. Her pretty face is all over the internet now, and I think it's going to be on the minds of voters come November.
Every official within the Biden administration who has been asked in a limited number of appearances about Laken Riley and her death has refused to repeat her name when given the opportunity. They've sort of generically referred to the victim's family. For instance, here's Karine Jean-Pierre on Monday being asked whether or not Biden will even mention Laken Riley, American citizen murdered by an illegal immigrant, this week.
Will President Biden publicly address Laken Riley's murder, allegedly at the hands of an illegal immigrant who was released by law enforcement multiple times on Thursday night? I know he's got a statement, but what about at the State of the Union?
Look, this is such a tragic story and obviously situation. This is someone's life that was lost, so I do want to always acknowledge and extend our deepest condolences to her family and to her friends and the people who loved her. And so want to always be sure to say that, and because it's so tragic. Look, I don't have anything to share about the president's speech as it relates to that particular question that you have. But we want to always be sure that we lift up the families who have lost their loved ones in that way.
Do you get the sense that they are conscientiously not saying her name out loud?
Of course, because the more attention you bring on this, the worse it looks on the Biden administration, because we've seen, according to the new Gallup poll, immigration and the border is the number one concern for voters heading into the election. It's not just Iowa caucus goers or West Virginia Republicans. Immigration is the leading concern. I've argued for a while, if Joe Biden loses this election, it won't be primarily because of his cognitive decline. It will be because of the border and the fear that has bestowed upon everyday Americans. And Laken Riley is now a symbol of what can happen. So, of course, he doesn't want to mention her name. Vince, I go back to it. When I wrote this column, I spoke to Rachel Campos-Duffy, who hosts Fox and Friends on the weekends. She's a mother of 9. I want to read you this quote because she thinks that this death will have a profound impact when it comes to casting your ballot. She said, Laken Riley's death was a wake-up call to moms across America, especially for us moms with college-age daughters. It's terrifying. And we will be thinking about this beautiful future nurse in our own daughters when we enter the voting booth. Remember the suburban security moms of previous elections? That's the type of impact this death can have, close quote. I think that's such a strong statement and accurate.
Yeah, and it comes at a time where you have, if you remember back to 2020, the chaos that the left just absolutely injected into our country is still being felt today. And now we've got all these headlines out. Democrats are trying to crack down on crime in their own cities. In fact, there was a big piece out of Politico today that basically Dems have decided in an election year to start cracking down on all of this crime. And that's because of real crime that's actually happening, that's really hurting American citizens. And voters are seeing all of this and going, they're having their eyes opened, they're having their families destroyed, and they don't want this, do they?
Absolutely not. And this is the one message that the left is struggling to control, right? Like you and I have talked about it. They control the message on race, transphobia, whatever that is. They don't control the message on immigration, and they're struggling. On Super Tuesday, MSNBC, the esteemed trio of Rachel Maddow, Joy Reid, and Jen Psaki, they laughed off concerns about immigration. I'm sure you saw that video. And Joy Reid interjected saying, Americans are just afraid of brown people invading their country. No, they're not afraid of brown people. They're afraid of what happened to Laken Riley happening to one of their loved ones. So MSNBC can't spin this story, so they're just going to downplay it and laugh it off.
It's so stupid. And also, tell that to the black residents of Chicago who are all stepping up to all of these public meetings and saying that the illegal immigration problem is out of control and destroying their city.
And it's such a concern for them, and they know it. But remember, last election, the message behooved them greatly. It was George Floyd, white supremacy, Trump not doing enough with COVID. That's not the case right now. Immigration is top of mind. The economy, crime, Joe Biden's inability to walk and speak properly. None of the messaging is beneficial to that side. And the indictments on Trump and the arrest and removing him from the ballot, that's not helping the left at all. And you look at betting odds, which I follow because they were more accurate in the polls in the past two elections. They have Donald Trump as a pretty heavy favorite, and that's justified from my perspective as we sit here today, obviously, with a long way to go.
I'm going to play some audio for you. This is a television commercial put together by a group called Building America's Future, laying the death of Laken Riley at Joe Biden's feet. Take a listen to this.
Laken Riley should have been able to go on a run in broad daylight without being murdered by an illegal immigrant. But Joe Biden promised not to deport illegal immigrants.
Should that person be deported? That person should not be the focus of deportation.
Biden vowed not to detain illegal immigrants who crossed the border.
No one would be put in jail while waiting for their hearing.
So when Jose Ibarra crossed into America illegally, he was not deported. He was not put in jail. Biden also supported sanctuary cities.
Should undocumented immigrants arrested by local police be turned over to immigration officials?
No.
So when Jose Ibarra was arrested in New York City for endangering a child, he was freed a second time. Ibarra went to Georgia, where he beat Laken Riley to death. How many more killers has Biden set free? Building America's Future is responsible for the content of this advertising.
So I expect what's going to happen tonight, Bobby Burack, at the State of the Union, is Joe Biden is going to attempt to pull off the most brazen act of gaslighting anyone's ever seen. And they've already kind of telegraphed that he's going to try and blame Donald Trump for all of this.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. But I go back to what I said originally. This is a matter that just don't believe they're going to be able to spin or capitalize or even mitigate. Say her name, which is originally a play off of Breonna Taylor, if I'm not mistaken. It's become a movement. You saw the church during her funeral. People lined up. The mother on Sunday called this tragedy so unavoidable. This is the story that Biden cannot run from. Like, the censorship industrial complex can't suppress this story like they have previous other inconvenient stories for Joe Biden. I think it's going to be a story for a while heading into the election, and one that could sway some on-the-fence voters. And I want to highlight, too, Laken Riley, this is not necessarily an isolated incident. There are a lot of illegals in here, a lot of them dangerous,
yes,
and a lot of people are at jeopardy. So Unlike George Floyd, I don't think we need to just focus on one person. This is a broader issue that is worth monitoring, even if the corporate media tries to undermine all of it.
Yeah. By the way, the George Floyd story also has a border connection to it as well. He had fentanyl inside of his body, and much of that was actually produced in Mexico. The cartels have been selling into the United States, although they make more money now out of the human and sex trafficking that they have been doing than they do even the drugs. And all of that is creating chaos in the United States. One last thing on Laken Riley today, Bobby Burack. Yeah. The House has just passed a bill this afternoon that would target illegal immigrants in the United States who have committed additional crimes beyond just being illegally here. They named the legislation after Laken Riley. The bill is called the Laken Riley Act. It passed by a pretty wide margin, 251 to 170. All 170 of the nays, those were Democrats. A bunch of Democrats, some Democrats did cross over to support the legislation today. It was put forward by Congressman Mike Collins, who, by the way, also is going to have an empty seat tonight as his guest on behalf of Laken Riley's family. As this issue is, at the moment at least, definitely not going away.
Yeah, and this is what bothers me about the state of the press and politics. Those Democrats that voted nay, I would love to see them go on cable news and explain why and explain what they would do to combat illegal immigration, or if they consider it even a concern. But they're not going to go on networks that ask them about that. And the networks they do go on, CNN and MSNBC, they're going to avoid it completely. And I think I'd like to hear from those members of Congress why they voted nay and what their solution is, because it's obviously a problem, and all the polls say Americans agree it's the problem.
Yeah, and every single one of those people shouldn't be in Congress. That's the other piece. Bobby Burack, really appreciate your time as always. Thank you very much for your time today and your excellent work for OUTKICK, sir.
Hi, Vance. Thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Quickly, I heard the previous segment, and the gentleman that was in your segment was fantastic. I tell you, I'm an immigrant myself. Came here young to this country. I've been here 30 years. I love it. I'll protect it. I'll do whatever it takes. My kids are born here. I have a daughter, and I also have a son that is soon going to be going to college. And I think about what happened to Laken Riley, and it's horrible how Joe Biden and his administration purposefully avoid saying her name. That's just that. If that would happen to my daughter or my son, it'll be like you stabbing me every time you ignore, you avoid saying her name or his name. It's just incredible. And the Republicans tonight should unite and have something, I don't know, a T-shirt saying at least, stay Lincoln. Stay Lincoln. Something to bring the attention and not remain quiet about this.
You know, there's a bunch of concern trolling going on in the D.C. press today, and this idea that, Republicans might shout out. And I even see some conservative people saying, don't yell out tonight. Don't yell anything. You're going to take away the focus from how awful Biden is. And I'm sitting there going, well, wait a second. First of all, like, the idea that, like, the left has been upholding decorum, so therefore the right should, is ridiculous. Like, no, just, if you want to shout out, go for it, but at least make it worth it. Make it worthwhile. If it's a chant of say her name, boy, that's going to be resonant. What name? What name are they talking about? If Marjorie Taylor Greene shouts that out, I'm fine with it. I'm gonna celebrate it tomorrow. It's just something needs to be done, because I'm miserable with what happened to Laken Riley. I'm miserable with what's happened to so many others who she represents, and I'd like to not see this in this country that you and I share, David.
Absolutely. I tell you, it's interesting because my wife and I have been watching these shows on, I think it's one of those subscription channels about death in campus, in college campus. And we've been watching like two seasons of that, and the real situations that happened. And then a few weeks ago when this took place, it just was incredible to see it played out right now in this environment. And the president of the United States doesn't make a statement when you see immigrants coming in. We don't even know who they are. They might be in your neighborhood when you're working to work, somebody can just kill you and nobody will know who it is. And the government's not going to say anything about it.
And they're
either.
from everywhere. And they're from literally the entire planet. It's like not any one country. It's just from everywhere. It's complete chaos. And nobody wants that. Obviously, including a legal immigrant to the United States who came here the right way and wanted to be here in the first place.
Absolutely. And the government is not going to bring it up because it's not convenient. I thank God for Peter Ducey, who is there asking real questions that nobody wants to ask. I really appreciate him, and I appreciate you for